Hi, everyone. Good morning. Nice to see everyone. I'd say I probably know about at least half to 60% of the folks in the room. But for those of you who don't know me, just in terms of a brief introduction, hi, I'm Alistair. I've spent a very long time, as my grey beard will attest, in the IoT space. I like to think I've made most of the mistakes that you can possibly make across software, hardware, and platform. Most recently, I led Semtech's LoRa business from the early stages of LoRa really is a nascent technology through to what I would claim is a position of global leadership now in LPWAN. Before that, I spent a number of years more in the platform space. So with Hitachi building Lumada, the industrial IoT platform that Hitachi launched a few years ago. And then prior to that, a number of years with Microsoft across developer tools, across the early days of what became Azure IoT, built by far cleverer people than myself, and also running some of the M&A activity around analytics. And like many of us, my background originally was in telecommunications, so I spent a number of years with Telefonica O2. I spend my time these days advising a range of different companies. I also invest in a number of companies, early stage IoT, hardware, platform, software, services, many of the areas that you guys are working in on a day-by-day basis. This is where the technical glitch starts. And that's not that button. Which button is it? Top one to the right. Oh, there we go. What I'm going to talk about today is a question that's probably, I would hope at least, at the forefront of everyone's mind, which is why, if the value of IoT solutions is so clear, and I think you can run across multiple different use cases, I'm sure Josh spends his time building business cases with customers, it's very clear that there is value to be had here. So why is not every company on the face of this planet implementing an IoT solution? What is it that's preventing that from happening? And I think the answer isn't that the value's not there. I mean, we've all seen the billions and the trillions and the numbers are always big. But actually, our understanding of this space has got better over the years. And the forecasts haven't changed that much. They're all huge. You can argue about which segment is bigger than the other. They're all huge, and they're all growing. So it's not the business case that's the problem. It kind of begs the question of what's not working. And I think the answer is really quite simple. Because when you look at the IoT, and actually you can see some of it in the space that we're in today, just like a shark is confused by a shoal of fish, customers have a clear business case for IoT. The problem is they face a massive range of choices. And every single one of those choices will tell you that this is the best thing, this is the solution, this is the tool that you need, when in reality, each of them solves a part of the problem. Now, there's an obscure, I would say, data scientist called Mr. Hicks, who invented this incredible law called Hicks' Law, which says the more choices you have, the longer it takes to make a decision. Now, you probably didn't need Mr. Hicks to tell you that. I mean, it's somewhat of an obvious conclusion. But the problem that we have actually, I would argue, created ourselves is that we have built a vast range of tools that target different challenges in the IoT. The problem is that when we built these toolkits, and I can speak personally, we were thinking about specific challenges. And we were thinking about things that we thought were difficult. We weren't thinking about the end-to-end problems that our customers actually face. And part of that, part of that is just down to the inherent nature of the IoT. I mean, it's complicated. So you go from the physical world into the cloud very often, then back out again to change something that's happening. And along the way, you have to deal with sensors and edge computing and short-range connectivity. I mean, this is actually a relatively short list. I could have doubled the number of bubbles and still not covered everything. And that complexity, compounded by the fact that the suppliers, again including myself in this space, haven't really thought holistically about the problem that customers face and haven't really focused on building tools that actually work together or building a single toolkit, all of which is incredibly difficult to do, is the reason that there is all of this choice and the confusion that customers face as a result. There are also other reasons, I would argue. And I think, again, those reasons are of our own making. We have worked as an industry diligently to build what we like to call differentiation into solutions. My thing's different. It's better than yours. It does the job cheaper, quicker, faster, you name it. Put the adjective that you choose in its place. And the challenge is that's being driven on by where the money's coming from. If you look at the VC community, outside of here, there's quite a few folks, and quite a few folks here, I'm sure, and the enterprises that also have funded the development of the IoT, they have been far more focused on a successful exit or beating competitors or, dare I say it, locking customers in by providing something that is different or better than everybody else than they were focused on the goals of the customers that they were actually trying to serve when it came to the IoT. And I would argue that that differentiation, for its own sake, has created much of the complexity that customers face today. I think, though, the biggest issue of all is that we've actually focused on the wrong customer. This, again, is of our own making. The way that we, and I take it upon myself again, the way that we have traditionally thought about and designed IoT solutions as toolkits for software developers who will build the solutions that we need to save the planet for future generations. And don't get me wrong, software developers are an incredibly important part of this equation. Without software developers building solutions, hey, none of it works. But while we need to understand and support those customers, the concept of the IoT actually combines two things, as the name suggests. It combines information technology and it combines operational technology. And it's the world of OT, the real physical world where things break down or get lost. That's where the actual value of what we're talking about is made real. And so while we've spent a long time thinking very deeply about the needs of software developers when it comes to the IoT, it's actually the people that need to use IoT solutions that we need to listen to and understand. And while those folks are very often highly technical, and I'm talking about process control engineers, production managers, these are highly technical folks. They are not first and foremost software developers. And as a consequence, a lot of the tools that we've built just aren't accessible. They're too complicated, they require too deep a level of technical skill in order to be able to operate. Or, I think more commonly, the customer is focused on trying to solve the problem. They're trying to hit the nail. They're trying to remove paper from their process. They're trying to avoid mistakes in production. They don't have the time to spend figuring out how to use the IoT solutions that we provide, configuring them, and deploying them. And when you talk about that base of customers, I think you see a number of suppliers who take a one-size-fits-all approach. And I would say that many of the platform companies have taken this approach. We're going to deliver this solution. It's going to solve all your problems. We've decided what inventory management involves, and here you go. And while that simplifies things, it cannot be one size fits all. We all know from the customers that we work with, every single time you sit down with a customer, their problem is different and unique. And that's not just salesman bullshit. That's just the reality of their businesses. And if we focus on delivering a single one size fits all, again, we miss the mark. It means that solutions need to be, I'm pointing this in the wrong direction again, they need to be easy to use. Now, again, this is a much overused term, and I've used a much overused graphic to illustrate this. Everything's going to be an iPhone, isn't it? But there's truth in the argument that consumerization of IT is everywhere. There is truth in the argument that a plant engineer or a production line engineer is used to, he or she, interacting with applications that are presented in a very simple, very usable way, regardless of what they're trying to do. They are, after all, regular people, and they're trying to solve a problem, and they need a tool that allows them to do that simply. And I would also argue that actually when you look at what drove this IT revolution, the cloud, everything that we're in, it kind of boiled down to one very simple thing. Now, I'm old enough to remember the days when, consulting businesses would roll up and they would build you your bespoke inventory management solution. You'd pay them an arm and a leg to do it, and they'd come back every year and they'd take the other leg that they hadn't taken the first time round. And as a result, many enterprise customers couldn't afford to implement these solutions. And those that did spent a long time explaining to their boards and shareholders why they were spending so much damn money on this thing. And then came along this revolutionary idea of customizable off-the-shelf solutions, or COTS. And that drove the growth of companies like SAP and JD Edwards, a handful of other companies whose names we probably don't recognize anymore. But it revolutionized the adoption of IT solutions and ultimately helped create the digitized online world that we live in today. So the transition of the IoT from where we are today, which, don't get me wrong, is significantly more advanced than we were 5-10 years ago, when I spent my time, as many of you did, I'm sure, explaining to customers the basic principles of this is why connecting something and getting data is good. We're not at that point anymore. We have customers who are asking us, how do you solve my problem? How are you going to do something? How are you going to deliver? We've got to think about that from the perspective of customizable off-the-shelf solutions, because I think that same model and that same mindset holds true. The other thing that I would argue, and I'm arguing a lot today, I know, is who implemented ERP systems just to have an ERP system? I mean, sure, you needed to know where your inventory was, you needed to understand how the business, you needed to have data that you could give your CEO on a Monday morning that kept you in a job. But the main reason that I would go to an SAP or a JD Edwards or a number of other companies whose names we don't remember anymore is because of what came inside the box. When I implemented SAP, it came with best-in-class processes built into the product. It came with domain expertise. I could leverage the fact that 100 other companies had built an inventory management system for components when I was trying to implement SAP to do exactly the same for me. And you've seen companies like SAP evolve over time and build more and more and more domain expertise into their products. In an IoT, we need to do the same thing. We need to give customers more than just great tools. We need to give them tools that come with added value and insight. Now, I've spent a bunch of years trying to do this, and we spent a bunch of time with the Hitachi Lumada platform. One of the core concepts behind the Lumada platform was Hitachi's a 100-year-old engineering company with 1,000 different business units that spent billions of dollars on research. How do you take some of that IP and encapsulate it into a product so that a customer doesn't have to start from scratch each time? That they have a pro forma way of doing things. Reading a meter in France is the same as reading a meter in Texas, is the same as reading a meter in Sao Paulo. It's fundamentally the same problem. Now, it needs to be customizable to the way that the customer actually operates and the nuances of their own business. But we need, as an industry, to offer more value in the form of understanding of how businesses should operate. And with the greatest respect, we're all experts in technology. Most of us are not experts in how businesses run. And that is a real gap when it comes to what we're delivering to customers in terms of best-of-breed processes. And ultimately, we need to make interoperability more than just a buzzword. I walked around here this morning and I counted 35 instances of interoperability on various banners. And it's great. Everything should work together, shouldn't it? But what does that actually mean from a customer's perspective? It's more than just sticking it on the box and saying this works with everything else. It's actually adopting a design ethos when you're building these products of not how am I going to differentiate, but how am I going to make this work with everything else that my customer's using? Never mind that I might want them to buy that from me. That doesn't matter. I need to design a product that can be compatible and is actively compatible with other products. Now, I think LoRaWAN, thanks to the LoRa Alliance, does a great job of that. You know, LoRaWAN is one of the most friendly technologies, I would argue, out there. And we have an environment where there are some less friendly technologies. And I would call out the cellular industry for some of the things that folks have done there to undermine technologies that ultimately their customers wanted to use. But we need to have an interoperable set of tools that reflects the patchwork of different device types, different data types, different use cases that together make up the IoT. And the good news is, there's a lot of these engineers out there, a lot of them. Now, this number comes from the World Bank, and we all like numbers in IoT, so I could have probably put 1 billion on there somewhere, but this is a relatively conservative forecast of people who are involved in mechanical engineering, civil engineering, electrical engineering, engineering real physical stuff, not code. And these are the people that we're trying to solve a problem for. So if we've got the business case and we've got the customer, and I would argue that we've got all of the technical capabilities we need in this room to answer the problem, we just need to kind of get on with it. So in summary, I would say, what is the key to really accessing that base? What gets us there? We've been talking about IoT for, what, 15 years? What gets us there? What solves the problem? Well, first, it comes down to customer understanding. We need to understand the world that our customers live in. And speaking for myself, I've spent many years in this space not really understanding what my customers were trying to do. It took going to hot rolling steel mills in Finland with Hitachi for me to sit down and go, oh crap, this is what they're actually trying to deal with? I mean, this is an environment where it's 110 degrees every day and there's bits of metal the size of houses moving around, and we have to understand the world that our customers live in, and we have to adapt our way of thinking and our design ethos to that world. We need to create easy to integrate, simple to configure, and accessible solutions. And those are 3 different things. You can build something that's easy to integrate, hard as hell to configure, and really not accessible to anyone but the data scientist that works, in the nice shiny white office off the factory floor. It's important that we think about each of these components as we design product, not just one. And finally, we need to bring more. It's not enough to deliver great tools. We have to bring domain expertise into the products that we provide. And taking the model of ERP, we need to build best-in-class processes, which many of you do. I know this is something that many of us have focused on. But as an industry, we need to make sure that we are delivering more than just the ability to do anything. Customers don't want to do anything. They want to solve the specific problem that they're about to pay you some money for. And so we really need to focus on bringing value that gets them there faster. And then finally, and in closing, stealing a line from Mr. Vinker, we actually need to work together as an ecosystem. And when I say we, I don't mean just us. I mean, we're all working in the LoRaWAN ecosystem in some way or form. I mean us, all of us. And whether that's standards, bodies, etc., or whether it's just basic, pure commercial good sense, we need to build these solutions together, recognizing what we are good at and what we are not good at. Gone are the days of one-stop shop, I think, where you can buy all of your technology from me and it's all great and it's all going to work together. And this bit might not work as well as theirs, but hey, mine works, it's integrated. We need to provide tools that can actually be integrated by customers in the way that they want. And with that, I shall close and pass on to the next speaker. Thank you.